Hey, what's up everybody? Today we are going to learn the basics of Adobe Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro is a powerful editing tool for video and creating social media content, you name it. Let's dive right in with the basics of Premiere Pro. To get started, I'm going to go ahead and open Premiere Pro and hit New Project. When I open that new project, I'm going to be greeted with this big fancy screen that can look really intimidating to a lot of people. What I like to do is I like to turn off all of my import settings. This essentially is like a Finder window, if you're familiar with that on your OS. But I'm going to name just two things. I'm going to call the project name Demo, and I'm going to set my project location to my downloaded folder of assets, the stabilized color assets here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Select Folder, and at that point, that's all I need to do. We'll go ahead and give this a second to open up. That will greet us with our Premiere Pro interface. Now, the first thing I always do in my Premiere Pro interface is I reset my workspace. This is really easy to do. You can either go to the top right button where it says Workspaces. I have mine set to Essentials, and then I'll just hit Reset Layout. Or you can go to Window, Workspaces, and then Essentials, Reset to Saved Layout. Now that we have our windows looking the way that we'd like, we have all our panels on the screen. We're going to talk about each of these in detail, but let's go ahead and get started in the project panel. The project panel is just essentially a place to store all your assets or media. You can put music, voiceovers, imagery, Photoshop files, adjustment layers, video clips, you name it. To organize those in our project folder, we're going to go ahead and create something called a bin. A bin is a fancy way for a folder. So I'm going to go ahead and hit bin, and I'm going to name my first bin footage. I'm going to create a new bin and call my next one a voiceover. There we go. Then my next bin, I'm going to call my music. Then one final bin, I'm going to name sequences, which we'll discuss a sequence in a few minutes. But essentially, these bins are holders for all the different media because you may have quite a few clips when you're working. The other things you can do in this view is you can go to icon view where you can see the icons. You can go to freeform view in which you can kind of zoom in and out of specific icons. These folders are empty. That's why you don't really see much happening. But I do like to show these before I load up the panel because then it makes it a little easier to understand what's going on. When you get to a view like this, just realize there is little cookie crumbs up here to navigate forward and backwards. If you're in a specific folder and you navigate backward, great. You can kind of go back and forth as you see fit. Other things you can do is search for specific media. We can create new items like sequences, adjustment layers, different color mats, you name it. That's really, really nice. We can delete different media as well as you see fit. And we can go through different options. So let's now go ahead and populate these folders. That's really easy to do. You're going to just click in the empty space and double left click, and that's going to open up your footage. And I'm going to go into my forest footage folder. I'm going to actually just grab all these pieces of footage at once, hit open, and while they're all selected, drag them with my left mouse button held down into the footage folder, and there you go. They give us a nice little footage icon that is essentially a video and audio clip in each. If I take my panel and expand it, you're going to see the different in and out points, the duration of each clip, all sorts of fun things like frame rate. You can make informed decisions. I'm going to go ahead and continue to add to this folder. I'm going to navigate back and I'm going to grab the Strange Dreamer and hold my control key and grab the Woods clip and put them in their necessary folder. Woods is a voiceover. Strange Dreamer is going to be a music clip. Now, next to each of these clips, you may notice that there is a little square. If I right-click on that square and go to Label, I can actually change the color of this. Premiere Pro is pretty cool. They kind of auto-determine what your clip is and assign it now a label. It knew these were different than the music clips alone. It gave them different colors. These colors will correspond to tracks here at the bottom of the screen that we're going to just make in a few minutes. Next step is to kind of inspect the clips. We can do this by going through different things like our icon view. As you can see, I can click and drag, which is really fun. I can go to my freeform view, my icon view, you name it. Once again, I can go back to that list mode and use the cookie crumbs to get me back to the beginning, anything that helps you stay organized. I'm going to go ahead and select my Title Forest MP4, and I'm going to double click on that. You saw if I double click on the text, it actually lets me rename it. That's going to open the source panel. Now, the source panel can be a little confusing if you've used Premiere Pro for the very first time, but I want you to think of this as a preview panel or a staging area to prepare your clips. In this panel, I have things like a timeline where I can hit play. I also just toggle the space bar, and I'm playing back here, and what you're noticing is a little bit of downgraded resolution. This is because this is set to help your RAM stay efficient when you're working in Premiere Pro. If I hit spacebar again, it will stop that clip. I could then go ahead and rewind it to my liking. Now, this is also a really important kind of staging area, as I mentioned, because you can set the in and the out points of a clip. The in and the out points are essentially where it starts and where it ends. This clip is 48 seconds. I only need it to be around 10 seconds. If I wanted to kind of hit spacebar and I hit the I key for in, that's going to set an in where that clip is going to start. I can then let it run through a little bit, and when I get to a point where I'm ready to kind of out the clip, I hit O and then spacebar. This segment now will be all that I bring in when I start creating my sequence. You could go through essentially and prepare all your clips ahead of time without having to worry about where they sit on the timeline. This is super helpful. And there's even little insert and override buttons when you do have a timeline where you can plop and drop those clips. That's right, I did say plop and drop. All right, now let's get this clip into a timeline. As it says here, we're gonna drop our media in. I'm gonna go ahead and left click and hold it and drag and drop. That's gonna create my timeline. It's gonna come in a little tab. I have things like the time slider, which I can left click on top of. I have my current time indicator head where I can slide it through and scrub. I have a list of tracks. A track is just a place to put a clip or an asset. You'll notice I have different audio tracks, hence the letter A, and different video tracks, hence the letter V. You can right click on these and add or delete as you see fit. Things like the eyeball work the same as other Adobe tools. You have mute, you have solo, which means you'll just have that track playing its audio, and you can even voice record right in Premiere Pro. Really, really cool stuff. At the top, you have all the different settings. If you went to timeline settings, you can see some of those different things you can fiddle around with. We're going to avoid those just because we're doing the bare basics of Premiere Pro here. Over in my toolbar, I have things like the selection tool, which is probably the most common tool you're going to use. We have different ways to move tracks. So if I hold my left mouse button down, you can see track forward and track backward. I have different ways to edit. These tools are ripple, rolling, rate, and remix tools. All will affect either video or audio in your scene. One of the most famous tools is the razor blade tool. You could just highlight, and I'm just moving my left mouse button and left clicking once and going back to my selection tool. That will allow me to cut the clip in half and move the respective track, or just actually highlight it and hit delete. So I'm going to hit Control Z a couple times to go backwards there, but that is a tool you might use. Slip tools and slide tools are essentially when you have multiple tracks on your scene and you want to move them respectively. We have our good old pen tool, rectangle shape tool, hand tool, and type tool, all of which, if you hold down, you see those earmarks, you get access to kind of different setups for you to use. Now that we have the tools underway, I'm going to go back to my selection tool and I'm going to look at this clip. Now, I wanted this clip to be roughly around 10 seconds. It looks like my in and out points were just a little off at 11 seconds and 6 frames. I'm going to just highlight over with my selection tool here without clicking a button and get this red kind of arrow. And if I move that, it's going to allow me to trim the clip. Now, a lot of people get clips and tracks confused. Just remember the track is this big bar and the clip is the actual piece of the clip. Now, I do want you to notice that it is blue like it said it was going to be here in the top, which is really, really nice. All right, now that we have that clip ready to go, we'll notice that we have a video and we have some audio. This clip doesn't have audio. It's just kind of a flat line. I'm going to actually right click on this clip. I'm going to unlink it. Right click is a great way to find, if you can't like figure out where something is, to find a tool. I'm going to then highlight my audio and hit delete because I only need this nice little fly-in. Now that we have that, I'm going to set up our track. To do that, I need to know the timing. And I have this really cool Woods voiceover that I grabbed. And this was made by 11 Labs, which is a website you can go to, type any text, it's free, and get some AI voices to create a voiceover for you. I'm going to drag this in, and I want this to be a title. So I'm going to start the clip a little bit later in the title. And I'm going to grab the bottom bar here to pull out my timeline, and here is my playback. So let's take a listen.
When is the last time you were truly alone in the woods? For the majority of you, I can assume the answer to that question. For some, it may be ages ago, while for a small minority, it may be recently. For those of you who answered ages ago or...
All right, so it's a little creepy, a little AI driven, but for demo's sake, it will work really well. This also tells us our entire project is going to be roughly around the 35, maybe 40-second mark. That's good to know because I got to fit these clips into that. Another cool thing Premiere Pro does is it actually presets by using AI what your clip is. It knew this clip was going to be dialogue. Now, if I went and dragged the Strange Dream clip in, and I'll put it on audio track 2, it's going to know that this clip is music. You see it flipped right to the music symbol. That's really, really cool. I'm going to trim this clip a little bit, and I'm going to move it in, and I want to show you one of my favorite cool tools. You can see this clip is way too out there. It's kind of hard to see because, oh my goodness, it's a long clip. Well, I'm going to go to one of my tools, one of my favorite tools in the ripple, and down to the remix tool here, and I'm going to just grab the edge of my clip and drag it to roughly where I want it to remix to. So what this is doing is using something called Essential Sound, and it's remixing the duration of that clip to have almost what we would call like a perfect ending. Through the magic of AI, it kind of rippled this clip for me, and it allows me to kind of end the clip really nice.
Peace and tranquility.
Kind of ends it perfectly. Another cool thing that was just added recently in Premiere Pro is these little icons. Now these icons, we can drag the icon and then we can move up and down to set the way the audio fades in and out. So if you pull it all the way up, it's going to fade in pretty quickly. If I pull it down, it's going to slowly fade in. Left and right will move the duration, up and down will move the strength, and this is kind of a quick way to do a fade in and fade out. Nice fade in.
When is the last time you...
Now we're having a little dialogue issue with our dialogue not being strong enough with our audio. When I click on either of them, my Essential Sound panel shows up and it allows me to customize. A couple things I could do is click on the word loudness, for instance, on the music. I could do an auto match. That's going to immediately lower it.
When is the last time you were truly alone in the woods?
If I want to make my audio change with the actual dialogue, I could scroll down and enable ducking. Ducking is a really cool way that you can actually select what it will lower itself for. When you do that, you scroll down and hit generate keyframes. That only works on the tracks that you see that are music labeled.
When is the last time you were truly alone in the woods? For the majority of you, I can assume the answer to that question is never. For some, it may be ages ago, while for a small...
Very, very cool. We can grab our audio or our dialogue clip here. We could also do something like enhanced speech or enhanced loudness. Enhanced speech is if your microphone of your voiceover wasn't looking too hot, we could go ahead and hit enhance, and then auto match will lower the sound to here.
Time you were truly alone in the woods.
The idea is we don't want these bars to get in anything that looks yellow, like deep yellow or red or orange. That's bad. We want to keep it that
When is
way.
the last time you were truly alone in the woods?
Cool. All right, let's go ahead and drag some of our footage. For this, I'm going to switch to the freeform view. Just look at some of my footage clips, and I'm going to go ahead and drag in different clips. Now you can see immediately that these clips are having trouble because if I let go, it's going to cut my music. Here, I'm going to go ahead and make it up to this bar, right click, unlink, and then I can kind of move this into place. I'm going to go ahead and unlink that, and by unlinking, we're really good to go here. Now we could also add another track above that if we wish, just to make it a little easier. I'm going to trim this clip because we're going to just kind of keep this pretty short. We're going to maybe fade into a clip here of this guy walking. I'm going to, again, unlink my audio. I'm going to overlap them a little bit. I'll pull that out a little bit. And you'll see that in a few seconds what that will do. And we'll do another clip. And again, we're just dragging and dropping, right click, unlinking. We're setting our rough cut. You can see this clip is abnormally long. We could use that razor tool if we wanted to, or we can just kind of trim this clip as we see fit. And we'll go up to, I want to end with the campfire. We'll go ahead and drag that campfire clip in there so we know where to end on it. Right click, unlink, perfect. Delete the old audio clip and just trim this just a little bit. Now we're cooking. All right. We have the majority of our clips ready to go. In this case, we need him sidewalking. I forgot this one clip, so I'm going to pull that in. Right click, unlink. Great. And we'll just kind of pull this clip in as we see fit. There we go. And that's a little way you can select your empty space if you wish. In my case, I'm going to just kind of snap these out and just kind of adjust them a little bit. There we go. We'll start that a little later. All right, this is our rough cut. Let's see what we got.
When is the last time you were truly alone in the woods? For the majority of you, I can assume the answer to that question is never. For some, it may be ages ago, while for a small minority, it may be recently. For those of you who answered ages ago or recently, can you remember what it felt like? Where were you? Why were you alone in the woods? Were you accidentally separated from a group while hiking? Or did you purposefully venture off on your own to find solace in the peace and tranquility?
All right. Now that we have that rough cut, we may still want to make a few tweaks here, but we can play a little bit with transitions. For instance, if I want to put these all on the same track, I can. It's very forgiving. Look at that. I can just hit delete, delete. Again, do a quick trim here. If I want to do transitions on this track, I'm going to go to the effect panel. I'm going to go in the effect panel to video transitions, dissolve. We could use things like dip to black. We'll drag that in the beginning and we'll drag a dip to black to the end. If I zoom in on these, we have the very similar kind of fade in and out. You can kind of see the similar bar that we had with the music, which is nice. I can do things like cross dissolves. If I zoom in here and grab a cross dissolve, I can put it in. Now, a big common problem people typically encounter is when they're doing a transition, it only goes on one clip. I click the transition, and sometimes you have to zoom in just to see it here. Again, I can click on that transition and go over here to my effect controls. That will give me this, where I can do center at cut. I'll just center these at cut for all of them. We're keeping this pretty simple with a lot of cross dissolves. Doesn't always work perfectly, but that center at cut will really get you where you need to go. Now that we have this, we need one more cross dissolve here at the very last camping clip. I'm just kind of clipping. If you can't grab it, you can kind of pull your timeline up and down. Just this way you can see them a little easier, and then you can grab them a little better. All right, you can always grab those and kind of pull them back down as you see fit, as big or small as you wish, if you want to see that. Now we have this.
When is the last time you were truly alone in the woods? For the majority of you, I can assume the answer to that question is never. For some, it may be ages ago, while for a small minority, it may be recently. For those of you who answered ages ago or recently, can you remember what it felt like? Where were you? Why were you alone in the woods?
All right, so you can see we're getting some really good results here. The next step I kind of want to do, you may notice, and I'm going to go ahead and mute my different tracks for the just a little bit. You may notice that the clips are very different. These are all different stock footages. They're a little bit wonky. We want to kind of color match all these clips. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually match the color using the Lumetri color panel. The Lumetri color panel gives me tons of options to play with things like exposure or contrast or shadows and highlights. You can see that does wonders on that clip alone. Black and white value we can play with. But one of my favorite is the color wheels and matching section. Now to do this, you open that section and hit comparison view. This is going to give you two different clips, a reference clip, which is a clip like this, and then whatever your time slider is on. Now this is really important because it's going to pull this bright and contrast information from this clip and apply it to the currently selected clip by just hitting apply match. That is going to kind of create this similarity through it. And then you can go to each clip and hit apply match and start to match those specifics on each clip. This will give us not perfect, but very close results in the sense of our overall tonality. One more clip there we can apply the match to, and at least we have a little bit more of a grayscale throughout. The big trick here is to remember to go to comparison view and click it again when you're done. Then you can always go back to your basic corrections. If you see something like this, you want to tweak the saturation down. This one, definitely we want to pull the saturation down just a little bit more just to get it that gray kind of eerie tint. We absolutely can do that. And again, we'll do it here as well. Now we have a pretty nice kind of theme to the color correction. Let's add a couple more steps. I'm going to go ahead back to my project window and we'll go to cancel here. We'll go to list view and we're going to go ahead and hit new, and then we're going to go to adjustment layer. I'm going to set an adjustment layer here. And when I drag that on, and an adjustment layer is essentially kind of like a transparent layer that will apply an effect to everything underneath it. I'm going to then go to my effects and look for the word crop. I'm going to drag crop onto my effects, and I have an effect. I'm going to go to the effect controls over to the right. I'm going to make the top and bottom about 10% on each, which will give me now letterbox. But check this out. It gives me letterbox on every single clip. How cool is that? Another really cool thing you can do is in here is if you click X here and go to Lumetri presets, you can add cinematic LUTs, which are kind of like color grading to an adjustment layer. For instance, if I wanted to add kind of this overall stylistic fade, I could do that. The Cinespace, which is really nice. You can see that pulls in some of the brightnesses and darknesses. This is called a LUT or color grading. I'm going to use Cinespace 25 for that. And one common mistake is if you're still searching up here, you won't get those options. Make sure you X out of your search so you have access to everything that you see here. In this adjustment layer, I added a crop. I dragged and dropped my Lumetri preset where I went to Cinematic, Cinespace 25, which comes with your Premiere Pro. And we are getting somewhere, y'all. Check that out. In a matter of minutes, we have a pretty cool result. Next, I'm going to add a title. I want to add a little cinematic title here. And I'm going to go to my Essential Graphics panel. We're going to go ahead and hit New Layer, and we're going to do text. Pretty easy. We're going to double click, and I'm going to type into the woods, which looks really nice. We're going to play with the things like the selection tool. We have all sorts of options in here so we can align to the center. We're going to change this quite a bit. We can pin this to specific parts. We can change things like the scale, which is really nice. Again, we can then align it once again. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to go to the font Komu, K-O-M-U, and I like this font, and I'm going to stretch the kind of tracking of this font. If you see here, I have a tracking option. I'm going to just pull that out a little bit just to make it a little more grandiose. Once again, I'll use my alignment tools and we'll click away, and there it is. That looks good. We could add a little backdrop to this. So if I scroll down on the text tool, you'll see I have a little background dropper. I love this tool where I can kind of put my little background, and go from there. So we can go ahead and have this kind of fade in. Let me show you how to do that using keyframes. I'm going to go to my kind of panel here, and this is really easy to do. I'm going to just click on the icon, and I have to have my text selected. I have my selection tool, I have my layer selected in the Essential Graphics panel. I'm going to go ahead and make this 0, and I'm going to move my time slider up a little bit. I clicked on the icon before I did that, and I'm going to then type 100%, and now we have a fade in. How cool is that? Now, if we wanted to fade this out, I could actually go to my effect controls. If I open this up a little bit, let's say I want to keep it to here, you can see I had those little round circles. Those are denoting there's a keyframe. If I open these up and I kind of scroll down to where I can find my keyframes, there they are. I can add another keyframe, and this will just duplicate this one, and we'll go forward a little bit, and then we'll fade out. Now we can fade in and fade out pretty nicely. I can highlight these keyframes pretty quickly, right click, and we can do something like an ease out of the movement, so we can get a nice kind of pan there. Now we have a title, we have an adjustment layer, we have color grading, we have the forest, the top view, the back walk, the sidewalk, the sunset, you name it. We are really cooking. We can go through as well and play with the different edits as we see fit. If you do at this point want to edit a little more, you can do it, but now that those transitions are on there, it's going to be just slightly ever so difficult to kind of get in there and kind of play around. Just know at this point, I think we have a pretty nice kind of end product, and we could even trim this clip and we can just kind of fade that out. Let's take a listen to our final product.
When is the last time you were truly alone in the woods? For the majority of you, I can assume the answer to that question is never. For some, it may be ages ago, while for a small minority, it may be recently. For those of you who answered ages ago or recently, can you remember what it felt like? Where were you? Why were you alone in the woods? Were you accidentally separated from a group while hiking? Or did you purposefully venture off on your own to find solace in the peace and tranquility?
We may keep this out just a little longer.
The peace and tranquility.
And we may kind of just fade. That's looking really, really good. Now that I have that, the other thing I wanted to kind of look at is centering this just to make sure I'm in the center. Yeah, it looks like I'm in the center of my composition, which is great. But now that we have kind of those clips, everything looks really good. That is the basic of Premiere. The next and last thing you need to do is know how to get this out of Premiere Pro. First, you check if you unmuted all your audio tracks. The second thing is you're going to go to the top right where it says Quick Export. You're going to name this file, and I'm going to call it my last name, Matt Forrest. There we go. And I'm going to hit save. Then we're going to just simply hit export. Really, in a matter of seconds, it's going to take that sequence and gather all that footage, and you're good to go. Now that we have that, we have our nice clip. We can double check our footage. There's our lovely clip for our export. That is essentially the basics of Premiere Pro. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I look forward to seeing your follow-alongs come to life.